Welcome back to the Transatlantic Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm very excited today to have a special guest, Daniel Dozier, who is with Jobs Ohio. Daniel, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Christina. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited to have you on the episode because you are actually the first of hopefully many agents of the economic development agencies in the US because there are so many states that people can go and set up their business that are fabulous. They have lots of opportunities. We're going to get into the opportunities of Ohio, which I learned are very surprising, and there are a lot of exciting things, but you'll tell us more about that. Little introduction. Daniel is the Jobs Ohio consultant for business development in France, which basically means he is your one-stop shop for all things Ohio for French companies. Daniel, would you like to maybe just introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks,
Yeah.
Christina. Hi, everyone. Daniel Dozier. Lovely to meet you. As you can hear from my English, I am an American national, mais je parle français aussi.
Hmm.
I first lived in France 25 years ago, here in Rennes, which I call home today. And that's where I learned French and developed my close ties to the country. And I've
Mm.
been back here for just over a year now,
Okay.
and have the honor of representing the state of Ohio, and helping French companies that are looking to expand their presence globally by coming to the heart of it all,
Hmm.
which is what we call Ohio. We also say that all roads go through Ohio.
Yeah.
It's a very well located state. For those unfamiliar with the sort of geography,
Oh, good. You have a
this is
map.
a sort of little map. It's within a 1 day drive of 60% of the North American population, which is really concentrated along
Mm.
the Northeast corridor. But without the Northeast corridor or coastal prices. And
Mm.
so that's another really attractive component of Ohio. And just to put it in perspective for our French audience,
Hmm.
I like to think of Ohio sort of like Belgium
Yeah.
in terms of its population and GDP, around 11 million people, $700 billion in GDP.
Okay.
It would rank 21st globally if it was
Yeah.
its own country. But it's also, 4 times bigger than Belgium,
Hmm.
and France is about 4.75 times bigger than Ohio.
Okay.
So just to help put some of those
Yeah.
numbers in perspective about its sort of location, its access to the markets that everyone's
Mm.
really trying to sell
Yeah.
to, its great transportation distribution assets, and then of course what people are really drawn to today
Mm.
is talent,
Yeah.
and of course, the ability to meet their energy needs and
Mm.
fill uh, orders quickly, deliver those orders to their customers quickly, and continue to be very competitive in the market with
Right.
prices that are still below average nationally.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like, like, I was really surprised because, I don't even know how long we've known each other by now. It's like a couple of years,
Yeah,
I
a
feel
couple
like.
years. Yeah.
Years. And I saw, yeah, the presentation that you guys did. It was in Lyon at an event with the European American Chamber of Commerce, and like I was really surprised at how attractive Ohio is because I'm from Mississippi, which is kind of a state that nobody expects much of, let's say. And I was like, Ohio, yeah, it's one of those states, it's up there. You don't really know too much about it. It's just kind of there. But in fact, it's actually very impressive. Like everything that you guys were doing in terms of business and like you said, all of those things that you just said, how conveniently located it is, prices.
Well,
Such
and
an
the
attractive.
other sort of historic component to
Mm,
its industrial
yeah.
footprint is its geography and proximity to Detroit and Michigan,
Mm,
right? 100 years ago, when the auto industry was growing and was became one of the biggest and most
mm,
important industries, it all really originated um, in Michigan, but Ohio became the leading state for components of those
okay.
vehicles. So
Ah,
while
okay.
the final products were assembled and rolled off
Yeah.
the assembly lines from Michigan, the engines historically had been built in Ohio. And
Okay.
Ohio has a lot of the very advanced um, machinery, tooling, and processes and manufacturing skills needed
Mm,
to produce the heart of the vehicle, the
right.
engine, from an ICE perspective.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot happening from an energy transition perspective, and that's
Hmm.
one reason too. Ohio has been so intentional about figuring out what could be next
Yeah.
when it comes to uh, vehicle power systems, because
Mm-hmm.
we make the lion's share of the
Okay.
engines that go not only into cars but also
Yeah.
the planes we all fly around the world
Right.
in, because of the Airbus engine partnership between Safran and GE Aviation.
Mm,
That brings in a lot of incredible, again, tooling machinery into the Cincinnati
right.
region in the southwest of Ohio.
Okay.
But Ohio has three major cities. Starting
Okay.
in the northeast on Lake Erie with Cleveland, going through a corridor through
Hmm.
the state, sort of like a cross down the state.
Yeah.
You have Columbus in the middle, and then
Hmm.
Cincinnati down in the southwest,
Okay.
which is actually a tri-state region, which is also
Yeah.
unique because it borders Indiana and Kentucky, and so
Mm,
that whole metropolis is
yeah.
really actually a tri-state
Okay.
economic team called Ready
Yeah.
Cincinnati that focuses on bringing companies to anywhere in that
Right.
region that crosses those state borders.
Okay. All right. Wow. So yeah, so there's sort of like three major hubs of activity in the
Correct.
state, and then of course there's the rest of the state. What you talked a lot about, yeah, the like sort of the automotive industry and things like that. What sort of companies do you work with mostly, helping them to come into Ohio and set up?
Well, so to the point about the engines,
Hmm.
batteries are obviously a major power system moving forward. And
Yeah.
so we've been very happy to see French battery manufacturers like
Mm,
Power
yeah.
enter Ohio and create a large plant that'll have about 200 employees just outside of our state capital of
Okay.
Columbus.
Yeah.
And we also have a lot of um, uh, glass parts
Hmm.
manufacturing up in
Okay.
Toledo. So we
Yeah.
have some great glass manufacturers and other automotive parts and seats and other components
Mm,
with existing legacy
right.
players like Forvia that are
Yeah.
major players in the state, Valeo, etc. So we have a wide diversity of those tier one, tier two
Mm,
suppliers into the
hmm.
auto and other mobility sector, I call it,
Yeah.
industries. But we also have a heavily um, rich sector focused on polymers,
Okay.
plastics, rubber,
Right.
and the whole industry started in Ohio.
Yeah.
Both, Ohio claims that we're the birthplace, and we are because of
Yeah.
the birth of the Wright brothers to the aviation industry in America,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
also
Yeah.
we have the petrochemical industry, which originated in Ohio.
Right.
And so that legacy has continued to this day. Goodyear Tire, a major
Yeah.
rubber and
Mm,
tire
yeah.
manufacturer, big competitor, of course, of Michelin,
Yeah.
which chose a neighboring state in the South to make their North American HQ,
Mm,
because Goodyear is still very strong and Ohio-born and bred company
right. Yeah. So.
just outside of Cleveland. But that Akron sort of epicenter in R&D related to materials, so
Right. Yeah.
polymers, plastics, and advanced materials, has attracted globally recognized French brands like Saint
Okay.
Gobain
Yeah.
into our state as well,
Mm,
who are leading that transition to lighten the weight of
right.
our cars and other modes of transportation
Mm.
to improve energy efficiency again.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So yeah, there's really like a big range of different industries, different types of companies, and yeah,
Absolutely.
got like
And then, of course, we have
yeah,
incredible amount of farmland
yeah,
and
sure.
dairy production. So we have a wonderful agricultural and ag tech industry as well.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, one of the largest food stores in America is headquartered in
Yeah.
Ohio, in Kroger. And then we
Okay.
have, of course, other consumer goods like Procter and Gamble, headquartered in the
Right.
States. So we have a wide range of both consumer goods.
Mm.
We have a large history too with retail and the warehousing and distribution of
Right.
clothing goods,
Okay.
textiles, as well as food and food products.
Mm.
Um, Pretty much everything you can imagine. Ohio is
Yeah.
really a microcosm for
Yeah.
what you associate and can think of writ large across America, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just sort of has everything,
Yeah.
but on that smaller scale
Kind of a
of
compact, like packed into this,
yeah,
state, which
exactly,
you said is basically about 25% the size of France. Was that it?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's like
exactly,
a quarter of France, and you've packed in all this stuff,
yeah,
which yeah, it kind of represents a little bit of everything, and
yeah,
like you said, really easily located to sort of access, the sort of the northeast and sort of the eastern coast, which there is a lot of the American population that's concentrated, sort of, I would say, yeah,
yeah,
east of the Mississippi River, and Ohio's kind of like up there in the top middle of
yep,
that,
in the
so
middle of
it's
it all,
yeah,
yep,
centrally located. Okay, yeah,
yep,
great. Now, a little bit of a question. I think this is kind of a touchy one. Is America still open for business? We
absolutely.
hear a lot about with Trump and all of this. Um, yeah,
Look,
what are you seeing?
my recommendation for everyone right now is to take a breath, right?
Mm, yeah, calm down.
Administrations come and go. Obviously, we cannot have a say at
Mm,
what happens at the federal level
sure.
from a policy perspective.
Right.
But business is going to continue to do business
Yeah.
and will continue to thrive. And America remains, a very strong and desirable place in which to do
Mm,
business and grow.
right. Yeah.
We have very stable markets,
Mm,
incredible talent, um, and there's an incredible number of French firms
mm,
already successfully doing
yeah.
business,
Yeah.
and that won't change.
Right.
There's a lot of chatter and there's a lot of discussion out there about sort of the policy changes, but
Yeah.
we don't know exactly how that could unfold. And
Hmm.
I would say that we're going to be here to help you succeed no matter what.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean it's there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of stuff happening, and it's kind of, I feel like it's in times like these where it becomes just kind of even more important to surround yourself with the people like whose job it is to stay on top of these things
Yeah,
and to keep track of what's going on. What are the changes? How does that affect, your business strategy, et cetera, so that, like agencies like Jobs Ohio can really just like guide the company like on the right track and help them to navigate these changes. And like you said,
absolutely.
yeah. But so how does it actually work? Like if I'm a French company
Hmm.
and, I'm kind of looking, I want to set up somewhere in the US, but I'm not quite sure where. And I'm kind of looking at some different places.
Hmm.
Um, how, how would I go about, like, how would you help me?
So, first of all, it's important to note
Hmm.
that all of our services and all of our advice that we can offer are completely free of charge
Hmm.
and are covered under NDAs.
Okay.
And we are not the state. So we're a nonprofit that was spun out and is independent from the state. So we also aren't subject to some of those FOIA or other regulations that
Mm.
require us to disclose the names of the companies we're meeting with. So
Okay.
everything's confidential.
Right.
That's
Okay.
very important. But again, it's important to not only be confidential but transparent in both ways.
Sure. Yeah.
And so what I tell companies looking at various states is you should be looking at more than one state.
Mm.
If you
Hmm.
end up in Ohio, great, I'll be thrilled,
Yeah.
and that'll be a little star in my yearbook.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, you're going to have a variety of options, and you're going to
Sure.
be looking at probably multiple states and
Mm.
where it could make sense for you to open a first or multiple locations in the
Mm,
U.S. And so, what I would recommend is that you narrow down the playing field, so to speak,
yeah.
to a short list, and then have both the embassy and or CASE, which is the
Mm,
Council of American States in Europe, or just representatives of those individual
mm.
states, know with whom you are exactly speaking and why, so
Okay.
that once everything is sort of shared from that perspective, we can come back with as strong an offer
Mm.
as possible.
Okay.
And
So
that's what
so
is
it's like
important. Like, we like to compete, right?
yeah.
We're Americans, so
Yeah.
we're a competitive landscape of
Mm.
economic development organization reps like myself.
Yeah, sure.
But we can only do that when we know that there is an opportunity for this company to go elsewhere. So if you come to us and
Mm.
say, look, we're looking at Florida, New York, and Ohio,
Right.
how can we work together?
Yeah.
I then take your needs in terms of, surface area, number of jobs you're creating, what type of jobs you would create,
Mm.
all these different details, and put it into a very, user-friendly form
Yeah.
that we then use to run our algorithm internally to
Okay.
determine how much of a subsidy or incentive we could provide you were
Mm.
you to create that company in our state. And then
Okay.
you can also share that and use that in conversations with other states. And you'll
Right.
see too that those other states might be offering tax breaks
Right.
and credits, but aren't going to give you a check that
Mm.
actually goes to your bottom line for
Yeah.
the expenditures that it will take to come into the U.S. And
Okay.
that, I think, is also a competitive advantage that we have
Yeah.
with our economic development model, which is quite unique.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a very good point because I think that is maybe kind of a bit of a cultural difference between the US and France. I mean, I feel like if we just I'm going to make a comparison. I don't know if it's the right comparison, but let's say I want to get a plumbing job done. I'm going to contact three plumbers and get a quote for them, but I'm not necessarily going to tell every plumber, hey, this guy, he gave me this deal and this is what he's offering. And it's you kind of don't tell people that. Whereas here, you're saying the opposite. You're like, if you're looking at Ohio, Florida, and New York, tell all of those other states, hey, I'm looking at these other two people and this is what they're offering me. And can you give me a better offer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there are wonderful opportunities to meet with us
Yeah.
collectively,
Hmm.
like the event you and
Yeah.
I attended as well in February,
Mm.
where the embassy, U.S. Department of Commerce, brings various representatives around
Mm.
to cities to meet with companies. And then once a year, there's a major event in DC
Right.
called the Select USA Summit, which will have all 50 states in attendance,
Yeah.
and federal territories like DC
Mm.
and some of the, Puerto Rico and
Yeah.
the islands and the Pacific, et cetera, and tribal nations too participate, which is great.
Right.
And so it's an opportunity to come and meet with as many locations as you could ever imagine,
Hmm.
and then also be able to have follow-ups and just build the relationships with the teams that you're, most seriously
Yeah.
considering, where and where it makes sense. And so
Right.
this then gives you the opportunity to say, okay, this is our dream scenario. In 3 years, we're going to, have 100 million of expenditures and
Yeah.
capex with, huge growth planned as well. 100 employees.
Mm.
What can you help us from a incentive perspective so that we
Right.
choose your state versus another? But
Mm.
be bold
Yeah.
in your vision of what's possible,
Mm.
because Americans are bold
Yeah.
and anything is possible in our
Right.
country, right?
Right.
So dream big,
Yeah.
know, where you think you can take your company,
Hmm.
if all things were to go your way, and then, challenge us to help
Yeah.
you with that vision so that you succeed.
Right. Okay. No, very interesting. And all of that is free for the companies that like if they wanted to call you up and say,
Absolutely.
Daniel, I need some help. I want to look at Ohio. Can you?
Oh six
Yeah.
five two eight five. Oh, sorry. 0652248518.
There
Call
you
me.
go. Do you have a hard time doing your phone number in English?
Yes,
It's easier in French, right?
much. Yeah.
Yeah, you say yeah, same here. Right. So what do you think is it important, if a French company, they're looking at different states, et cetera, what do you feel like is important for them to understand about the different states and how this works, state versus federal level, all of that, which is, I mean, it's all very different from France, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I think a key takeaway is there are lots of partners
Mm,
that can help you across lots of different um, pieces of the puzzle, so to
right.
speak.
Right.
And so once you have your business plan, you
Mm-hmm.
know what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a product, a service, you know, and you've already been through Christina's incredible workshop to help ensure
Yes.
that you are culturally ready
Yes.
for the US market. Then you talk to an EDO rep, such as myself,
Mm,
or multiple EDO reps. You figure out and narrow in on a region of the country. And then you get even more specific
right.
into specific communities of the country that could make a good place for you to do your business. And whether it's, you know, manufacturing facility that requires, a
Mm,
certain number of megawatts, certain, quality of
mm,
water, and a
yeah.
certain, quality and consistency of energy, all those things are taken into
Okay.
consideration.
All
And
right. Wow.
then, like I said before, you do that process over a couple of different, three,
Mm,
four places and
right.
see and compare and contrast
Yeah.
which ones make the most sense, either from an existing customer perspective,
Mm-hmm.
potentially, from an incentive perspective,
Right.
potentially, and just from a relationship and feeling perspective. You're
Sure.
gonna
Yeah.
you're gonna feel where's right when you
Yeah.
see it, when you visit, when you get a sense of the community's assets,
Mm,
and what it is that you're bringing to the table.
right.
Because that's the other thing that the French also, I think, need to remember.
Mm,
You're bringing your skilled knowledge, asset,
yeah.
service, product to a new market.
Right.
And that's going to be widely, at least in certain circles, applauded, appreciated, and
Mm,
it's going to benefit the local community because
right.
you're providing jobs and
Yeah.
therefore improving the tax base.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So
You're.
that should be seen for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, French talent or HR and savoir-faire
Yeah.
and the recognition culturally that we have in the U.S. about business practices in France
Mm,
can also be a major selling point
yeah.
for why an American would want to potentially join the company.
Yeah.
They've been to France, they're attracted by the culture, they want to work for a company that's going to
Mm,
allow them potentially the opportunity to travel to
yeah.
France, to maybe speak some French,
Mm-hmm.
to maybe get more paid time off than their
Mm-hmm.
U.S. colleagues, and to feel like they're part of a really close knit
Yeah.
team that's
Right.
international, and multicultural. So there are some real selling assets, I think,
Mm,
to making sure that the firm is positioned well. And that's the
right.
other thing that we as an agency can help provide
Mm,
is we're sort of like your in-house HR department before
okay.
you have your HR department set up in the US. So
Okay.
we're there to help you, advise you on how to frame your recruitment announcements and the platforms to use and how best to
Right.
brand
Right.
yourself in a new community and attract the talent that you're going to need to succeed.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, so yeah, like you said at the beginning, sort of one-stop shop for
Yep.
everything that someone would need help with when they're looking to go and set up in Ohio. Um, do you have any like success stories that you could share with us of perhaps companies, that have come from France and they have come and they've set up in Ohio and they're doing very well, now, and how long does that take generally? And yeah, any
Well,
stories you can share with us.
so I would recommend everyone to pick up this great magazine.
Mm,
This is an edition that came out last year. It's still available. I think you can buy it directly from the MEDEF
Mm,
website.
right.
But there's a wonderful article featuring Sophie Tricot,
Okay.
who I mentioned from 4C Power, who
Yep.
talks about the process she went through in choosing Ohio.
Mm,
And we're thrilled with their presence and growth and success. And that process was just about a year.
okay.
Basically,
Okay.
similarly, it was around this time of year she
Hmm.
heard about the Select USA Summit that was happening
Yeah.
in 2022, and it was May June timeframe. It's always May
Okay.
or June,
Yeah.
and so she came to DC. She met with 3 or 4 different states, honed in on a few, got some proposals back in the fall
Mm,
for a package
right.
to help settle in on specific communities. And by the end of the year, she was closing on the deal that
Okay.
ultimately led to them signing and acquiring the space that they're using for their factory outside of Columbus.
Mm,
So, it can be done quickly,
yeah. I was
especially
gonna
if
say a year. That's
for
really
brownfield leasing and you're
yeah.
not doing a greenfield custom design space that needs to be, built
Mm,
out of nothing. So,
yeah.
if you know basically square footage, energy needs, water needs,
Mm,
and sort of other growth needs for
yeah.
where you want to take the firm over the next 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
we can find you some very attractive sites very
Okay.
quickly. And then again, from a decision making perspective, though, it's important that remember that the U.S. is a very competitive market,
Mm,
and so real estate deals also close much more quickly
yeah.
than in France.
Right. Yeah.
So, they're going. Sophie told me just the other day when we were at an event together as
Mm.
well last week, she would get on the plane to fly back to France, and by the time she landed, someone else had already signed on the lease
Oh, right.
of the
Wow.
facility that she just visited prior
Like,
that
yeah.
day.
Oh,
You
right.
have to be very responsive and very reactive
So you need to
in
like
order
kind of make a decision as quickly as
very, very
possible,
quickly.
really. Like if you feel like, yeah, this
Or
could
you
be
want
it.
to,
It's
yeah,
you want to sign on that. Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's a good thing because I feel like the speed of decision making is very different between the
culturally, it's
US
very
and
different. Yeah.
and France. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, right. Now, I'm just curious and this because this is one thing that stood out. So I'm just going to ask you to share it. But how does the state of Ohio pay for all of this? You told us about this at the
Yes.
event,
So
but I was just like that's just more
we're the economic model that every other state wishes they could somehow achieve.
right.
The stars aligned about 12 years ago, and we had a legislature that passed a law
Hmm.
creating the Jobs Ohio beverage organization.
Yeah.
And so, because the state has the monopoly on the sale
Okay.
liquor,
Yeah.
spirituous alcohol, all those monies are then collected and are used and are paid both into the state coffers for various
Mm.
things, and then some of
Right.
that is used for our economic development
Yeah.
initiatives.
Right.
So that means we have consistent, stable,
Mm.
and very generous funding
Right.
across, for the past 12 years, and that's
Right.
given us a very robust team,
Mm. Yeah.
both within the state,
Yeah.
which is headquartered in Columbus, but then with these 7 regional economic development
Right.
organizations. So as I mentioned, there's the statewide entity, but then you're going to go into a local community, which
Mm.
is part of a local economic development
Right.
organization, as well as part of a regional. So we have
Okay.
7 regions, and lots of counties
Yeah.
at the regional level, and then lots of cities. The big 3 I mentioned:
Hmm.
Cleveland, Columbus, and
Yeah.
Cincinnati. But then you have secondary and tertiary cities like Toledo and Akron and Dayton.
Yeah.
So every region has its own particular sort of focus and
Mm.
dimension, but we will connect you with the right team based
Right.
on your project,
Yeah.
and then that team will also work very closely with the local community in identifying those sites at
Yeah.
micro community
Mm,
level to present as an opportunity to
right.
any company.
Okay.
So lots of other states are trying to follow the Jobs Ohio
Yeah.
model, but it's proven more difficult to pass that type of legislation than I
Mm,
would have thought would be the case given our success
yeah.
in unlocking these, very serious funds, comparatively speaking.
Right.
As you mentioned, the representative for the French market. Most
Right.
states will have a representative like me covering all of Europe.
Oh, right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so Illinois, for example, a major state, also
Yeah.
in the Midwest,
Mm,
huge economy,
yeah.
huge city like Chicago.
Chicago.
They
Yeah.
have one person covering all of Europe.
Oh, right. Okay.
Jobs Ohio has 10 people like me covering
Okay.
Europe,
Is that like
covering
one per
across.
country,
Yeah,
basically? Or
yeah.
okay, right. Wow.
We
Yeah.
have reps covering Spain, Portugal, Italy, Benelux, the Nordic countries,
Yeah.
Germany, which also covers German-speaking Switzerland,
Mm,
the UK, Ireland.
okay.
So we're a very diverse team
Yeah.
with a large footprint.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and again, historically, because the auto sector has been such a major driver
Mm,
in foreign direct investment between Europe and America, a
right.
lot of our reps are headquartered, US reps are headquartered in Munich.
Okay. Mhm.
But I'm one of the, I think, if not the only full-time state rep headquartered in Paris.
Okay, right. Nice. Yeah. So okay, so very interesting. And so what I guess is there like a top 10 or a top 5 list of the types of companies that should contact you or does it or not
If you're
necessarily?
looking to build something that requires, advanced manufacturing, that requires stable, consistent, relatively inexpensive energy,
Mm,
water, land, definitely give us a call and take a
yeah.
look at what we can offer you in Ohio. If you're looking to hire anywhere from 50 to 50,000
Right.
employees, definitely take a look at Ohio.
Yeah.
Um, we have a huge talent pool, and we are helping companies prepare for the future.
Yeah.
If you're, an innovator in advanced mobility or
Hmm.
unmanned vehicles or touch on, anything related to aviation,
Mhm.
automotive, or agricultural, definitely take a look at
Yeah.
Ohio. Um, and then we're also a state that has a huge financial services sector.
Mm,
JP Morgan Chase is headquartered in Ohio.
right.
We're the fourth largest financial services market outside of New York,
Okay.
and some other states. But we have a lot happening in Ohio.
Mhm.
And so while it may not have been at the top of your list for destinations to visit from a tourism perspective,
Yeah.
we have a lot going on from a business and community perspective. There's a
Mm,
great place to visit. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to do work.
yeah.
And we welcome you with open arms.
Okay, no, great. And I think that's a good way to close it off and to let people come and contact you with their project and explore all of the opportunities in Ohio. Like I said, when I saw the presentation at the European Chamber, the European American Chamber of Commerce, I was like, wow, like I didn't know that. So I was like, yeah, let's get Daniel on and tell us about all the great things going on in Ohio because I feel like it is very underestimated, but there's a lot going on, very attractive for companies that want to go and set up there,
Yep.
and they need to go and explore it and find out more. Definitely.
And it can start with an easy, phone call, email. I can pop one of these in the mail. You
Mm,
take a look. It has a little bit of information to
yep.
review, and then we can schedule a Zoom call, and I can connect you with the team
Yeah.
back in Ohio, and we can start from there.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, and I'll put all of the information for people to contact you in the notes for this episode. And
Great.
hopefully, we can get some businesses set up in Ohio in the next year or two.
Let's do it. And
All right.
please, also, if you're curious about learning more about Select USA, it's happening the week of May 11th. There's still
Mm,
time to register and to
mm.
join us. So please don't hesitate to contact either of us to join that delegation,
Yeah.
being led by our U.S. Embassy colleagues in Paris. I'll be in D.C. I'm
Mm.
actually from D.C.
All right.
and it's really exciting to be able to go home for work
Yeah.
every now and again, and it's a great time. And of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
Jobs Ohio hosts the marquee best party of the week, so
Of
we'll
course.
invite you to that for sure as well.
Right. Yes, exactly. All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you,
Have fun,
Christina.
have fun at the event. And
Yeah,
yeah, talk to you soon.
see you around. Bye bye.
Bye.